Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Narelle Chedzey, and with my colleague Thomas Emge, we're going to talk this morning about editing and geodatabase integration within the ArcGIS Pro SDK. First, we'll start with the editing API and what that gives you access to. So primarily, we have access to the edit templates and the sketch geometry. You also have the ability to create custom sketch tools and construction tools. And we generally divide those up in that sketch tools allow you to modify the geometry of existing features, whereas construction tools are used to create new features. We also have a number of edit events within the API. The most important ones are the edit completed event, which allows you to capture, create, modifies, and deletes across all layers and tables within your map and your pro session, project. If you're interested in only a specific layer and capturing the creates and modifies and deletes for a specific layer, then you would subscribe to the row created event, the row changed event, or the row deleted event. The editing API also contains an inspector class, which we use for the streamlining of attribute editing. One of the more important objects in the API is the edit operation object, and we recommend that all data manipulation should be executed as part of an edit operation. And what you get from this is that your data manipulation has been added to the undo and redo stack for you. Now you can have multiple edits within a single edit operation, and by that I mean you can do multiple creates, edit, modifies and deletes. So I could do 3 create features, 2 delete features, and modify attributes of another feature, all within a single edit operation. And that means they are all grouped together as one operation on the undo and redo stack. And the edit operation gives you methods to create features, delete features, modify attributes and geometries, add and remove attachments, and perform other geometry updates such as moving, merging, clipping, exploding, and etc. And here's a little snippet that we have, very simple operation. So I'm going to create my edit operation. I'm going to give it a name so that that name will appear on the undo stack. I'm going to use the current template, and I'm going to queue 2 feature creations. The first one I'm just going to pass a geometry. The second one I'm going to pass a different geometry, and then I'm going to execute that operation. Edit operations also provide you with the option of obtaining return values from some of the methods. In this particular instance, we are using the create method, and we're going to add a lambda to the end of the create method to obtain the object ID that is returned when that feature is created. So again, I've got my edit operation, I've got create method, I'm using the current template, I'm passing in a geometry, and then I add the lambda at the end to take the newly created object ID and put it into my new object ID variable. You can also add chain an operation into your existing edit operation, and this is another way of linking 2 edit operations into a single item on the undo redo stack. Here I've taken my existing create operation, I'm chaining an additional operation, and then I'm using the add attachment method, passing in a layer and an object ID along with a document or a PNG file, and then I'm executing that operation. So if we take all of those snippets as a whole, I've got my creates, I'm obtaining the object ID that is returned from that create, and then I'm using that to create a chain to add an attachment. And so all 2 of those actual edits, the create and the add attachment, become part of the single edit operation on the undo stack. There's also some methods on the project object to help you determine whether you actually have any edits. So there's the has edits property, and then we have the save edits async and the discard edits async methods to allow you to save or discard your edits as you require. The next thing we're going to talk about is a construction tool. as I previously mentioned, a construction tool is for the creation of new features. If you have the SDK installed with Visual Studio, one of the templates available in Visual Studio is a construction tool. And when you choose that construction tool, it will stub out a class and a DAML entry for you. And this is what you get stubbed out in your C# file or your VB.NET file. So we have the simple constructor where it says, yes, I'm a sketch tool. Yes, I'm going to use snapping. And here is the sketch type I'm going to use, or I want my user to be using. In this particular instance, it defaults to the sketch geometry type of point. We also get the onSketchComplete async method stubbed out for us, and it gives us a very simple implementation that occurs when the sketch completes. So basically, it's really just an edit operation with a name assigned to it, and then you run the create using the current template and the sketch geometry. The entry that you get in your demo file is similar to what you would get with any of the other buttons or anything. You get an ID, you have a caption, a class name, a number of images, and a tooltip. You also get a special attribute called the category ref ID. And this is signifying what is the geometry of my destination feature class. What is the ultimate geometry that I want to be storing? And by default, it's set to Esri editing construction point, but you could change that to Esri editing construction polyline, polygon, multipoint. They're the other ones that are supported at this point. So I'm going to jump right into Visual Studio right now, and we're going to go ahead and look at what we've just discussed in terms of the edit operations and construction tools. So here I'm going to go ahead and create a new construction tool. I already have an add-in defined with a couple of buttons on it that we're going to talk about later, but I'm going to start with a construction tool. And my construction tool is going to basically use a point sketch, but I'm going to buffer that point, and I'm going to end up saving my geometry out into a polygon feature class. So as you can see, I've got a new C# file that's been created for me. Looks exactly what we looked at in the PowerPoint slide. So I've got use sketch tool, use snapping, and it's defaulted to a sketch type of point. I also have the onSketchComplete async where I have my edit operation, a name, and it's queued up my feature creation. If I go out and look in the demo file, you can see that I have, I have my ID, I have a caption, I have my class name, which links back to my C# file. I have images along with a little tooltip. I'll just fill this out so that when we... And then I have the category ref ID. Now, like I said, I want to be able to save this out to a polygon feature class. So I'm going to change that to Esri editing construction polygon. But when I go back to my C# file, I want to keep my sketch type to be a point. So how do I change a point into a polygon? Well, there's many ways you can do it. One of the simplest ways is just to do a buffer operation. So I'm going to use the geometry engine class, which is one of the geometry static classes, which holds all of the different geometry manipulations where you can move objects, split objects, buffer objects, do all sorts of things. I'm going to choose the buffer method. I'm going to take my geometry sketch and I'm going to specify a distance, and that will return me a polygon object. And then I'm going to take that polygon object, or that buffer object, and instead of passing the sketch geometry into create, I'm going to pass the buffer object in there. So now when I run this, and I open up ArcGIS Pro, I should see a new construction tool added to my polygon feature class within the Create Features pane. Oops, I guess I do need the network.
Which one would you like?
That one will do. sorry. Internet access. Oh my God. All right, well, maybe we can create a polygon without necessarily worrying about our base map layer. So here you can see here's my polygon feature class. I'm in create features, so here's my list of templates on my polygon. And here's all the native construction tools. And here's my special one, the point buffer. So I can choose that one, and I should be able to click here and create, and what I've really done is created a polygon feature, and that's been stored. And if I look up at the undo stack, I've got my single edit operation, which is up on the undo stack. Now what I wanted to do next was also add in the other items that we talked about, the ability to be able to chain and retrieve the object ID. So if I go and copy this, and instead of doing the create here and the execute async, I'm going to come along and do a create, but I'm going to use the template and the buffer, and then I'm going to add in this extra bit at the end, which is going to retrieve the object ID from that create feature. Again, I'm going to execute, and then I'm going to look at what the result is. And if my result is a success, I'm going to come along and chain an operation off the create, which is my attachment. I'm going to add the attachment using the layer and the new feature ID that was retrieved along with a picture. And again, I'm going to execute that. Now, instead of just returning the task that is the create operation, I actually want to await these because I want this to be sequential. So in order to await, I need to change my function to be an asynchronous, function. And my little compiler warnings disappear. Now I need to return this one to be false. And so what I'm doing here in onSketch Complete is taking the sketch geometry, I'm buffering it to get a polygon, I'm creating it, I'm retrieving the object ID, and then I'm going to add an attachment in a chained operation. So even though I've done multiple things, I should still have one thing, one item on the undo stack. So if we go ahead and run this, and I'm going to put a couple of breakpoints here, and also here, and then there. And I have internet access now, so we have the Palm Springs Convention Center. So now, again, when I go and choose out my construction tool, I can click on the map. I come down here into the execute async, and if I run that, oops, wrong button, run that one, and you can see that now I come out to my lambda function, and I can see that the object ID here is 1, and so that's going to get passed into my new feature ID variable. And then I'll come down here to the end of the execute async. I can see that I'm true, and then I can go ahead and create my chain operation. And when I look at the feature that I've created, I can see that I have attributes, I have a geometry, and I also have an attachment now. And when I look at my undo stack, I still have a single item on the undo stack. So if I choose to undo that now, what Pro is going to do, it's going to undo the attachment, and then it's going to undo the create feature, all as a single operation. Next, I want to talk about edit templates. They generally go in conjunction with construction tools or sketch tools. So edit templates are what we use to supply the attributes for the features that you're creating. There's many different ways to obtain the edit templates that Pro has. You can use the current template, or you can choose to find a template by name off a specific layer. So here's a couple examples. We have the editing template.current object. or you can choose to do map.findLayers by name and then get a template by name. And once you have a template, the most common thing you're going to want to do is activate the default tool with the template and actually make that template current. And you do that with the activate default tool async method. You can also create your own feature templates or modify existing feature templates. There's two things we need to be aware of. Right now, when you're doing template operations, we're going to be using the SIM, which is the cartographic information model. And that is really just an internal representation of an object stored as a bunch of XML. And the other thing we need to be aware of is this flag called auto-generate feature templates. And that's a property that sits on the SIM of a feature layer. And if that is set to true, then unfortunately, no matter what you do, your saving and your templates are never going to stick. And that is, the auto-generate feature templates is what Pro uses to know that when you add a new layer into a map and you set up a symbology, auto-generation of the templates occurs according to that symbology. Now you specifically need to set that flag to false for you to be able to manipulate any of those templates or save any of your existing templates. Because if you don't, then the auto-generation is just going to overwrite whatever you've done. So in the snippet we've got here, we've got a polygon layer. We get the SIM by calling getDefinition. We're going to go ahead and check the flag. If the flag is true, we're going to set it to false. And then I'm going to choose to create a new template. So I use the SIM feature template object. I'll set up a name, I'll write some tags, I'll do some other things, and then I want to basically write that new template back into my polygon layer or my polygon layer's definition. So I'll get the existing feature templates off the layer definition. I'm going to add my new one. I'm going to assign it back to the feature templates property, and then I'm going to set the definition by, and that actually commits my changes back to the polygon layer. So because I've changed the flag and I've changed the feature templates definition, when I commit, everything's going to be committed and nothing is ever going to be overwritten. One of the other things you might want to do is, with your new construction tool, is actually make that the default tool for a specific template. And to do that, you need a GUID. And so in the DAML file, you would add a GUID into your tool. And then within the template, you need to get the definition, set the tool prog ID to be that GUID, and then set the definition. Now it's very important that get definition and set definition kind of go together. If you don't set the definition, then anything that you've done has not been committed. So if we run back into Visual Studio, I am going to go to a button that I have, which is Add New Template. And I want to basically make the construction tool that I just created, the point buffer construction tool, I want to make that the default tool on this particular new template. So the first thing I want to do is go back into my demo file, give myself a GUID on my tool, and then when I go into my C# file, my button and the on click, I'm going to find a polygon layer. I'm going to get the SIM definition of that polygon layer. I'm going to check the flag, set it to false, and then I'm going to create a new feature template. I'll give it a name. I'm going to write some tags. I'm not interested in default values at this point, but the important thing is this tool prog ID and this GUID is the same as what I just pasted in my DAML. Similar to the snippets, I'm going to get the existing set of feature templates. I'm going to add my new template. I'm going to assign it back, and I'll set my definition. So if we go ahead and run that, you can see I have a single template here, same as what I had before. the default construction tool for that template. I go over here, I'll choose Add New Template. You can see that the flag is set to truth. At this point, I'm going to change it to false. And I have a new template that's been created called My Template. And when I expand it out, you can see that this tool my point buffer has become the default construction tool. And that's it. And so back to the slides, and I believe we'll go to Thomas next.
Okay, thank you. You don't do group templates? Group editing?
I'm not talking about group templates at this
come
time.
on.
If we had time at the end, we'll come back to the
Okay,
group templates.
we'll keep that as a teaser towards the end.
Yeah.
Okay, you can change the display to 5.
That's what I did. That is you.
Yeah, oh, that is me. Okay, thank you. So I'll be talking about the second type of tools that you would like to create for the editing environment. So quickly visualize back on the editing toolbar. Well, let's take a quick look. Narelle talked about the create tool. So I will be talking about the modify tool and how to get into this environment to add our tools into this category. We're starting out very similar to the construction tool. We're inheriting from the map tool, from the base map tool. So we have the tool ID, captions, the classes where the tool lives. Nothing special here. If we're looking at the code a little bit further down below, we're also specifying that we would like a display feedback. So is sketch equals true? In our case, we would like a rectangle, so 2 clicks to define the bounding box. And the sketch geometry would like to come back in map coordinates. And then on the sketch complete, we can do our manipulation with the existing row or with the feature. Now, the difference here is that as opposed to the construction tool where we had where we specify our target geometry, we're using a different category ref ID. And to get into the section for the modify tools, we're using editing command list, as you see here on the right-hand side. This opens up when you click the modify features tool. That pane opens up with all the listed tools under there. And so in order to participate in this pane, the command list category ref ID is the way to go. By default, you're just being put into the collection right here. If you would like to give yourself a title, you add an XML element, content, L group, and you give it a title right there. You can also participate in the existing ones, so you just pick that title as part of your L group, and you can also associate, so rank order where you would like your tool to appear among the other tools. And for that, you use the place with attribute. You cannot change the order of your title. Your title is always going to be ending up at the bottom. If you participate into the other ones, you can arrange yourself on where you would like to be placed. So this is one entity to get in there. The other entity, if you imagine the editing ribbon, is that there are also galleries. And so if we're looking here at the bottom, visualize kind of like the gallery of, well, let's just call them premier or most frequently used tools. In order to participate in those entries, you can also add in the content element, add attributes of gallery 2D or gallery 3D as true or false. So you have the option if you would like to be participating only for the map views and or scene views. It is recommended, of course, then if you are participating in a scene view, you change your sketch output mode to be of screen type so that you can actually perform the selections against the map using the screen coordinates. Now the other thing that is interesting here or different is that most of the time, so when you look at the core tools, you click one of those buttons in there, there's an additional user element that does appear. And you don't need to do that, but if you do want to do that, the way that you would achieve that is that you're adding an embeddable control into your solution. So once you've added this into your solution, the entity there that are being auto-generated for you as part of the Visual Studio template is that you're being inserted, or that it is inserted into a category of embeddable controls. And then in order to tie this embeddable or this UI component into your tool behavior, there's a property on the tool you are setting as the control ID. And this control ID is the ID that is being set or you set in the declarative demo specification. After that, you're essentially just following the coding pattern and using MVVM practices so that properties or behaviors is being set on this view model. So the control itself you would cast to the interface or to your class name, and then you pass in properties. And we'll take a look at this in code, what this will do. Now, there's yet one more convenience class, something that Narelle had mentioned in the beginning, that is the inspector class. It kind of is a convenience class and serves three purposes. It gives you a convenient way to access and update the attributes. You can retrieve schema information from a layer, and it in its own right provides UI components that kind of like behave like an attribute window that you can reuse in your solution. So let's take a look at these in a little bit more detail. So in this code example, we're getting the selection of the map, and then we're creating an instance of this inspector class. Into this inspector, we're loading the first feature that we have retrieved from our selection set. And then once this feature has been loaded, we can directly, through the shape property, access its geometry, or in a similar kind of way with key value pairs, retrieve or update the attributes. Then we start an edit operation and just hand it the inspector class, and everything is taken care of for us. However, we can be a little bit more succinct than this. And there's yet one more convenience method on the inspector itself. So again, getting the selection, loading the feature in there, but then as opposed to starting our own edit operation, we can just call apply, which in return does an edit operation and signals everything out to the framework. The schema information, very similar behavior to retrieve the schema information. So we're creating an instance of the class, pointed to a feature layer, and then we'll have access to the attribute. So if we want to list or enumerate through the various fields and types of fields that are available, that's the way to do it. Now, the third one is a little bit more interesting, that we can reuse those UI components that the class offers. So on the instance, we can call the create embeddable control method, and this will return a tuple to us, which holds the view, which is what is then being shown to the user, as well as the view model to interact with it. And then if you would like to place it maybe in a docking container or in a pane, you would just bind this view in your XAML file, and you will end up with something like the screenshot here on the right. And we'll also take a look at this in code. Now, there's one more thing before we actually do take a look at the code itself and the events. I think we can keep this fairly brief. Narelle has mentioned, I think, most of the contents that I would like to emphasize here. So the edit completed events is the catch-all kind of thing. You do subscribe to it. Usually you do that on your tool constructor or in your module constructor, and then you're being notified of everything, of all the edit operations that are happening within the application. And then as part of the arguments, you can, the creates, modifies, and deletes are being handed to you as dictionaries, and then you can sort through which layers are participating in there and the respective OIDs that have been created, modified, or deleted. This is happening after the fact. So you're just being told after the fact that has happened, so there's no way of canceling or changing that. As opposed to the second type of event that happens during the edit operation. So think of these events as you're being inserted into the edit operation itself. They are slightly more granular. You can subscribe to specifically only the rows, the creates, modifies, and or deletes. And these events happening on a per table, per feature class basis. Because you are part, or this event is being triggered within the edit operation, this is your chance to cancel out of the edit operation if you so desire. Now, you have to be a little bit careful here because you are actually inside the edit operation. And be careful when you're updating an additional attribute because that would trigger a new edit operation. So you can get into a situation where you're actually ending up in cascading edit operations. If you do that, be sure you have an exit clause. Otherwise, you quickly run into edit operation overflows, and that's not pretty. Yeah, thank you. It's just something to be aware of. And so at this point, here's the one takeaway from the whole developer summit. If you're doing editing in Pro, use the edit operation and use the convenience methods on the edit operation. Stay away from the callbacks. The edit operation is your way to go. Please do remember that. Now that I have your attention, of course you can do it other ways too. And one that I would like to bring up is actually doing a direct operation against the Geodatabase or against the database. There is this one particular method in there that might be of interest to you, where you can issue direct commits to the database through the core.data namespace. And a funny thing about that is, because it is living in the core environment, it can be used outside of the ArcGIS Pro application. Because it is decoupled from any kind of application behavior or framework, there is no undo or redo stack. None of the convenience signaling that you get from an edit operation, like updating other table views, triggering symbology updates, and so forth. None of that. You're just modifying the data, and that's it. You also need to take care of making sure that you're releasing the proper resources. You are also in charge of that. And this mode is commonly referred to as the standalone mode. Okay. With this, I think we are looking at some code. So what I would like to do is take a modification of a tool example that we have in our code repository on the community samples on GitHub, and slightly modify it so that we have an inspector tool where we're doing some some tracking on the side for quality assurance purposes. That is actually, whatever you do to it is just tracking all the actions. So let's take a look at the tool constructor. So nothing terribly new here. Yes, we would like a display feedback. It's of type rectangle. So this is fairly similar to what we saw in the construction tool. And then taking a look at the configuration file, also fairly standard, except for the category ref ID. And that we're saying we would like to create our own group called Pro SDK Samples, and we would like to participate only in the 2D gallery, but not the 3D. So let's take a quick look. So we click our modify, and once we collapse some of the other categories, we'll see our tool down here. If we expand, go up to the gallery, here's the tool, and if we are switching to a 3D scene, then we're not participating in this one. So everything is wired up correctly. That's beautiful. So now what happens if we click this tool? Okay, so some of that magic has happened and our user interface has loaded. So what just happened? Well, let's take a look at that. So in our tool, when it activates, we're saying, okay, to the embeddable control that we have added, let's cast it to our class, which in our case is called the attribute control view model. So this is then what I would be interacting with, and whatever is happening within the dockpane, this is being managed by this class. We're getting the selection. In our case, we're looking for the first point layer that we are finding. So if we do find one, let's get the selection and also set that as a property on our view model. We're using this to fill out the tree view that you saw up here. Then we continue and say, okay, because there's more that we would like to do with it. And we're checking if an event has already been set. So as part of our quality, or for this example purpose here, we are interested in a specific field called VIN. It's a very important number. So we're only interested in this VIN field changes that are happening. And so from the inspector, we're looping through the attributes, and if it's of type string and it is called VIN, then we're subscribing to the changes that are happening there. So once we've subscribed, we set it to true. As a next step in our constructor, or in our activate, we're also making a call out and connecting to our quality control database that is also part of our project. We're holding on to that. And then we're also saying, okay, for all the events that are happening, let's also listen to them and react accordingly. Now, there's one thing that I might have glanced over, and this is this embeddable control, and subsequently just using the inspector. Now, what just happened there? Well, if we actually do take a look at our view model, in its constructor, we are creating the instance of the inspector. So our view model of what is being put into the dock pane manages the inspector for us. And so we create the instance, create the UI component of the inspector, and also then exposing these as properties on our own view model that we are setting up. There is one of the things that we would like to do is we did subscribe down here to our feature event or our property changed. So what are we doing with this? Well, this is where we would like to inform the user if an intelligent edit had been made. So if we're taking a look at what is actually happening here. So if something changes in here, if the attribute has not been validated yet through our inspector, we're checking, is it a good number, essentially. And with some highly sophisticated method that we're using here, we're changing or determining, is it a very important number or not? If it is, then we're setting a property on our view model, and this will then trigger an according visual state on our dockpane. If it is, then we're actually submitting it into the database. And so let's give this one a try. And because there's something else, so with this VIN, let's take a quick look at this also. This visual change, that is that we're actually popping up a little message or a little text block that is bound to this property of is VIN, and it will flag us or provide the user some feedback. Yes, this is a very important number or not. And let's attach our processor. So on clicking the button, we already had a feature selected, and so everything was triggered on the tool activate. So if we're going in here and changing it to a not so important number, we're actually being notified. So the number was checked, condition was not met, property set on our view model, the view model changes the view accordingly, and so everything works as expected. Now, if we're now making it a very important number by adding a T in front of it, T for Thomas, we're actually now, because we're hitting now this apply method, so in this case we actually did trigger the modify and the commit to the database. The subscription happened on the edit completed events. So we're being notified after the fact. In this case, we're dealing with a modify, and now we're actually attaching back to the external database that we've grabbed or initialized on the Activate sync. And here we're saying, okay, I don't really care about any kind of undo or signaling out there. It's just something that I would like to always track. And so we're using the standalone feature. We're creating a row buffer, setting the attributes, and then making the commit. And oops, we'll just keep going. Let's just put this continue. Okay, the edit has been completed. And to show you that none of it is smoke and mirrors, here's our audit table. We'll add this. And one of the last entries. There we go. We've just completed and tracked our edit. Voila. Beautiful. So that is pretty much it for our presentation. We do ask you to please fill out the survey. I also would like to tell you that there's a new instructor-led class coming up for the Pro SDK on April 3rd and 5th. And we do have time for questions.
Yes.
Is there a way to register a construction tool as multiple geometry types?
No, I believe not.
So you have to have a separate entry?
You have to have a separate entry, yeah. You first, and then we'll come back to you.
You said that if you use your own grouping, you can't order it in the dockpane. But if you just apply your tool to the default groups, you can
Yes.
place it at. Does that? Can you do that with the inline gallery view on the ribbon? Can you place it toward the?
No.
I believe no.
Okay.
No.
Right. Not 100% sure, but 99.9% no.
No. So, I mean, this is to place you, but you can also add, I mean, once you're in here, the user also can just add you to the favorites. So that's another way of potentially trimming down the list of available tools.
Okay, and your question, sir?
Is there a list of the category ref IDs?
Yes, probably if you got the combined demo file, which if we switch back here, I can actually show you that. If we go into Visual Studio, one way you can actually find the combined demo file for the entire application. I'll actually stop that. If you type dump combined demo in your command line arguments, when you run Pro, it will actually, when you start Pro, it throws up a notepad which is full of the entire combined demo file for Pro. I mean, that in conjunction, you can also go out to your Windows Explorer folders and look at the demo files of the individual modules. But in this way, you can get the combined demo file for everything that Pro is running, and that includes any of the add-ins that you might have installed on your machine. So this is all the COTS objects and all the add-ins that are loaded. So within here, you could look at Esri editing, construction point. And actually, if you look down here, not so much at the tool group, but at this category ID here, we have point, multi-point, polyline, polygon, and multi-patch. There will soon be, at the next release, there will probably also be an annotation group in there as well. Right now, these are really the only construction groups that are available. Multi-patch is a little funny at this point. So really the only ones supported are the point, polyline, polygon, and multi-point. And then annotation will come in the next release.
What was the command again?
Back in Visual Studio, /dump combined demo file, all as one word. And then once you have that, it's easy enough just to save that out to a single location, and then you can load that up in whatever XML editor you might want to look at. Any other questions? No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you register a construction tool and register it with the command list category?
No, because the construction tools live in the Create Features pane. It's sketch tools and modify tools that live in the modify pane. So writing a construction tool to create features and modify features at the same time doesn't make sense. Yeah. You had a question too? No? Oh, just pointing to him, okay.
Well, there's this thing, I mean, technically you can make your sketch tool behave like a create tool, right? I mean, you don't need to have, for example, a UI component. Is that the user experience that you're looking for? You need to see, I mean, you need to test it out on.
Just the inspector, the attribute editing.
Right.
Object, yep.
Yeah, in the old objects you had to register it with the Geodatabase, but that's
Right.
off now.
Yes.
Okay.
There are no feature class extension or behaviors
No.
in the Pro environment.
So in objects you had to implement, what was it? Feature class extension.
Object class extension, I
Oh,
believe. Yeah.
right, yeah.
Object inspector. what-
Yeah. Yeah.
That's off now.
That is off, but this is the way you would duplicate a similar behavior.
Anything else? Going once, going twice? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming, and I hope you had a great conference. Hope to see you all again.